What's up, guys? Ivan Carranza here, back with another video, and today I want to talk about playing versus performing. So this summer I've been playing quite a bit, we've been traveling a lot, we've played several festivals, so I've had the opportunity to see many bands perform, and of course we've been performing quite a bit ourselves, and that got me thinking about different things. And of course I noticed things in my playing and my performance that are different than a couple of years ago. And also the band that I'm currently playing for, Dr. Crapula, has, let's say, challenged me to improve my playing in certain ways, not necessarily technique wise, but how I approach certain things. So I want to give you a couple of tips and also share what I've noticed in the hopes that that can help you and your band maybe perform better in the future. So if you've been playing for some time already, you probably can play some songs, some covers, for example, right? You can physically play the material. You know where the notes are, you know where to fret, you know, you can pluck or pick the right notes. And probably if you're, on your own practicing at home, it's just you, your bass, and you're just, looking down at your fretboard the entire time. And that is definitely fine if you're playing on your own, you're having fun at home, or, playing with friends at a rehearsal, just to have fun. But that's only a small portion of what, making music is about. And for example, if you get a gig, you're playing for people, unless it is something like, jazz or maybe classical music where people are, they're really focused on listening exactly what you're playing. So the notes that you play and how you play those notes have a much more important meaning. Unless it's those genres, if it's like, pop, rock, or other types of music, let's say more mainstream types of music, people are going to a concert for entertainment, right? It's a show. People want to have fun, want to enjoy a night out, want to, forget their troubles for the, 1.5, 2 hours that you're playing. So it's more than just the music. It's the entire performance. And this is where, playing versus performing comes in. So of course, to make a performance with your band or with an artist, you have to know the material. That's, the very base level. But I would say that, to be able to perform it, you have to really, really know the material and not have to think about it while you're playing, because once you start to think about too much, then you're focusing on, okay, what am I doing with my hand here? Am I playing the right notes? Which part of the song comes next, and so on. So that should be ideally ingrained in your brain, and you don't have to focus too much on those details, because then you can focus on doing other things. So for example, moving on stage a bit, instead of just standing still and playing, you can move around. You can also maybe do some dance moves if that's required on your gig, headbanging, interacting with the audience, interacting also with photographers that are there. That's also important. Interacting with your band members. If somebody's taking a solo, or there's a riff part, or there's, a unisono line or something that you can, go to your bandmates and do something together that's cool for the audience to see. Those are all important things to consider during a performance. Also, how to engage with the crowd, meaning how to involve them in the show. Maybe there's a sing-along part. Maybe they, interact with your bass line or with the drummer. There's a million things that you can do to make the show more interesting. But here are a couple of things that have helped me to perform better on stage. Like I said, number one is really learning the material and not not thinking about it too much while you're playing. Of course, there are situations where maybe the mix in your ears or from wedges is kind of weird and you really have to focus on, okay, I don't hear anything, so I have to count bars. If that's the case, that's fine. But for most scenarios, really know the material so you can focus on other things. Another thing that has helped me is adjusting my strap to a height that is, I would say, the middle of where I would ideally have it for me to play everything comfortably, and lowered so it looks cool. I'm not a tall person, I'm fairly short, so I cannot have the bass super low, even though that looks cool, because at one point my wrist starts to look kind of like this, and it just hurts bad and I cannot fret anything. So I have it low enough that I can play things for the show properly and without pain, but a bit lower than I would have it if I was to, have the bass at the position where everything is available on the neck. Because here is the thing. For example, there's a couple of songs for our set with Dr. Crapula where we jump, and as fun as it sounds, I had to figure out how can I jump for an entire chorus and still play my bass line, right? For example. So one thing that I noticed is that, okay, I need to have the bass at a certain height so that my right hand can push against the body of the bass so that it doesn't move around like this, and I can still fret the notes. So figuring out those little details is also very important, because otherwise you're not going to be able to perform. So whenever we have to jump, I try to make sure that I can sort of pin the bass with my plucking hand, ideally with like this part of my arm, like right before the wrist, and so that makes the bass stay in place, and then I can play everything that I want without worrying the bass shifting positions and throwing off my fretting hand. That's one thing. The other one, we also have a couple of portions where we're dancing. We do dance move on stage, not super complicated, but we move we move together. And for that, I had to, as fun as it sounds, I had to be here at home on my own, stand up and practice to turn around and move around to the dance moves while I'm playing the bass line, so that I can play it live on stage without thinking about it too much. And even as simple as it looks, still, I have to be able to do it several times in front of a crowd without worrying about what I'm doing. So that it's kind of like an autopilot. And like I said, practicing it at home, standing up, that's another very important point. So if you're going to play a live show, ideally you're not just playing sitting down at home, unless it's like a theater gig where you're playing sitting down. For most shows, you're going to be standing up, so you have to practice things standing up as well. And you might be surprised when you do that, because similar to what I just said with the jumping, that I have to pin the bass with my right hand, once you stand up and you have the strap height somewhere in the middle, like I said, between what's really comfortable and what's unplayable, so somewhere in there, some things are easier to play if you kind of like shift the bass to your left, to your right, how the angle of the bass is for certain sections of a song. What happens if you're walking, playing, and you have to play your line. So those are things that you can prepare for if you do kind of like the homework at home and practice the set that you're going to play standing up, and figuring out, okay, in this part of the song, it's easier to play this riff or this bass line if I have the bass like this, or more horizontal or more vertical, or I shift it towards my right side, or I shift it towards the left side. I have the bass more straight down, more like at an angle. So you can figure all those things that work for you at home, so that when the time of the gig comes, you're not completely thrown off because, what do I have to do? The bass is not where I'm used to having it, and so on. Another thing that you can also practice is if there are, accents, like unisono hits where the whole band is doing like a bam, try to, just for the sake of practicing it, maybe you don't include it in your show, but do the movements of those hits with your bass. And you might notice how physical you have to be to do some of those things, because in your head, at least that's my case, and what I've, other people have told me also, if you do like a movement at home and you move the bass like this, you might be thinking that for the audience it looks like, oh, he's or she's swinging his bass around, it looks super cool, but you have to really over exaggerate the movements that you do for it to translate to the audience. And this is something I believe that, for example, theater performers do, be it a musical performance or a full regular theater performance. You really have to exaggerate your movements for them to translate and for the whole audience to be able to see them. So really emphasizing those movements is also important so that it does communicate the audience. Otherwise, you might be thinking that, you're really moving around on stage, but in reality, you're just doing like this, right? Now, all of this doesn't mean that you have to be a clown on stage and jump around and move around and do all these acrobatics or so on, but just something to be aware of that of course you can, but ideally you're not just standing there playing things up and down, and when the song finishes, you look up and then you keep playing looking down. You have to make the entire audience feel like that one person in front of you is getting the entire show for him or her, so that they feel involved, they feel like they are part of the experience, because it is an experience. A concert, a show is an experience. You're not just playing the music. Otherwise, the people can just turn on Spotify or whatever at home and listen to things. They want to be part of that moment that only happens once. Therefore, it is important to practice performing as well. What are you going to do? What is the band going to do? Which moves can you do? How much can you move around while still playing the right notes and the right bass lines and so on. And there is something that I remember a couple of, I think 2 months ago maybe, there was an interview of Marty Friedman by Rick Beato. And Marty Friedman was the former guitar player of Megadeth. And he said, when I go to a live show, I want to see the person playing really, sweating. I don't really mind if, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't really mind if there are wrong notes. I want to see the guitar really down low and taking risks and so on, because if you want to hear a perfect performance, like I said, you can just turn on the record, unless you're really butchering the material, a couple of mistakes here and there or adapting some lines is fine, as long as the rhythm and the vibe match the entire show. So I hope these points help you or give you something to think about. Maybe you can start working on a couple of things, playing standing up, moving around while playing, maybe doing, something very simple like just playing and moving on a beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, while you're playing, also counting it out loud. Things like that do bring a big effect to the overall performance. So I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with the content that's coming to the channel. As always, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.